The United Healthcare CEO shooting is going to need a slow ethics video. So grab coffee or tea or wine at this hour where I'm recording this. Make yourself comfortable and let's go. This is a multi-level issue, and I think to understand it a little better, we need to understand 6 steps. And the first one has to be, there is a reason why state monopoly of violence is part of the rule of law. Bear with me, that's just the first step, right? But I, for one, am really happy to live in a country where I do not have to spend my time mastering the use of weapons and teaching my children to do the same, because we might be attacked at any time and have to defend ourselves physically. There is a multitude of good reasons why it is not allowed to take justice into our own hands. And that is step 1. Step 2 is that we should all be able to make our grievances heard and to affect corrections in the way our countries are organized if it is really not working for everyone. If you have power in a country where there are grievances, you should be able to point to the mechanisms that are going to work to make the grievances heard and to make the corrections possible. If you have power in a country where such mechanisms do not exist or do not work, and in a country like that somebody resorts to violence in order to be heard or to attempt to effect a correction, you are still allowed to point to step 1 and say there's a reason why there's a state monopoly of violence. You're still allowed to condemn the violence, but you have less standing to do so than if there had been a mechanism to effect the needed corrections. In other words, violence as political speech of last resort is not the same as gratuitous violence. They're both violence. You could condemn them both, but you have to recognize that they are 2 very different things. Step 3 is the public reaction. The public reaction and the people scrambling over one another to try to change the public reaction. But from what I've seen, mostly among those trying to change the public reaction, there is a confusion of point 1 and 2. Because point 4 is, yes, of course, we should not condone violence. But point 5 is, we shouldn't want violence to stay the last resort either. And that is at least as important. In medicine, we have a mechanism called a morbidity and mortality report, where when something went really wrong, we go back to the beginning of the case and analyze every little bit of it and every bit of the context to see how we could change things in order for the problem to not recur. It would be a politically responsible attitude to analyze this case in the same way. And to me, it seems inconceivable, if that was done, to not include in the things to change so it doesn't happen again. How could victims of US health insurance tactics be heard in a non-violent way? And how should that industry be regulated to prevent it from causing the sort of resentment in victims that leads to such situations? Yeah, that and pew-pew regulation, of course, but we're in the US, you know. This last point is perhaps the most important, but I haven't seen it discussed that much. Not as much as the we should not condone violence on one side and the let's support the shooter on the other side. There would need to be space for let's support citizens, but perhaps US citizens are often fatalistic about this at this point. It's entirely possible. The 6th point is that, yes, of course, we should not condone violence, and we should recognize it in its hot and cold forms. The most striking descriptions of this, in my opinion, was given by Yuval Noah Harari in Sapiens. He has many, many great quotes, but this is certainly a great quote, and it goes like this. This is the fly in the ointment of free market capitalism. It cannot ensure that profits are gained in a fair way or distributed in a fair manner. On the contrary, the craving to increase profits and production blinds people to anything that might stand in the way. When growth becomes a supreme good, unrestricted by any other ethical considerations, it can easily lead to catastrophe. Some religions, such as Christianity or Nazism, have killed millions out of burning hatred. Capitalism has killed millions out of cold indifference coupled with greed. So, of course, violence should not be condoned. Let's remember we have violence on both sides of the equation here, though. Yeah.